All right, hello, how are y'all? This is my second time here speaking to the Chamber this year, so I'm very honored to get a chance to come back and speak about a project that is a long time coming for the city of Kyle. The majority of what I'm going to talk to you about will just be trying to take a dive into the road bond proposition that's coming before the voters in November. I want to give you background mainly because it's important, I think, for our residents and our voters to understand just how much thought has gone into what we were asking the voters to consider. So my name is Travis Mitchell. I guess starting actually yesterday, when you go to the ballot, you'll have to go all the way down to the end from the top of the ticket all the way down. One of the very last propositions will be for a $294.4 million roads bond that includes 10.3 miles of new construction and reconstruction. So it's a combination of fixing old roads and widening old roads, as well as constructing new roads to create new paths of transportation for folks in our community. So why now? I think that question is pretty simple. You know, every year we do a community survey, and one of the things that we always ask folks to do is to rank their priorities for what they want the city of Kyle to be focusing on. And without doubt, every single year, the highest score comes back that folks want us to be focusing on roadway improvements. And so we've taken that to heart. The last time that we passed a bond or went to the voters for a roads bond was in 2013. And that bond produced the construction of Philomena, which was Go Forth and became Philomena. It also became the Philomena Drive extension. Marketplace, which is constructed from Burleson to basically the Target area, as well as a Marketplace extension, which connected the Burleson roundabout to I-35. The actual construction of Burleson itself, which was a really great widening project there in downtown Kyle, as well as a section of Bunton heading out east, and then the entirety of Lehman Road. So from 2013, when that roads bond was passed, until about 2021, the city of Kyle undertook constructing those roads and fulfilling that obligation. I think in my mind it would have felt wrong to go back to the voters to ask permission to build new roads until we had finished the work before us in 2013. And so it was about 2020, 2021 when we finalized the last of the two roads, which were Lehman and Burleson, and began making plans for the next set of roads to ask the voters to consider. So as everybody knows, the city of Kyle is growing. We have grown quite rapidly over the years. It depends on how you look at the numbers to determine whether it's 50% or 100% or 600% in that time frame. But just to give you some context, when I was elected in 2016, the population of Kyle was about 32,000 residents. Fast forward to today, our population is close to 60,000 residents. So we have nearly doubled just in the time that I have been in office. And for the business community, that can be a good thing. But for the folks who live here, that kind of growth brings a lot of stress and strain. And it's certainly been noted, I think, throughout the community that as developments come online, more traffic goes on these roads, and the roads can deteriorate before they get better. So there are times when a road gets worse before it gets better. The other thing to consider is the fact that the city of Kyle was built over county road infrastructure, which was designed for low traffic, two ways, no turn lanes, no sidewalks, no lights, no utilities, and those kind of things. Not really designed for a modern city. So as we grow, we have to identify which roads we're trying to redevelop, and we need to build those to a city standard. So the slide will say that this project really sort of kicked off this year, which certainly it did. But the truth is, the city council started discussing bringing a roads proposition to the voters in February of 2021. So we're at basically a year and a half of planning to get to this point. And the original consideration for the council was to potentially bring a proposition for the voters last year. And ultimately, we decided not to do that. And the reason we made that decision is because of the lessons that we learned trying to deliver the 2013 roads bond package to the community. In the year 2013, when the city of Kyle went before the voters, the total amount for the roads that was proposed was really sort of what you would call back of the napkin math, where we applied sort of a basic concept, a basic mathematical formula for how much a road costs per linear foot to construct, tabulated that out over the roads we wanted to produce, and sent that to the voters. At the time, we did not account for things like acquisition of right-of-way, relocation of utility easements, and some of the nicer features that a city road needs to have, like sidewalks and upgraded fencing and lighting, pedestrian improvements, and those kind of things. So there was no engineering done. And so what happened is in 2013, when the voters came out and overwhelmingly approved that proposition, we had to start from scratch, essentially, and say, well, all right, the voters have now authorized us to do it. Let's start taking a look at what it might actually take to build these roads. And each and every road, with one exception, the majority of those roads ended up costing more because we had to acquire right-of-way, relocate utility lines, and build them out in the way that you currently see them. There also wasn't uniform design standards that applied over all of those roads. So it could be the case that one road project would receive a 6-foot sidewalk and another road project might receive a 5-foot sidewalk. There wasn't sort of a uniformity. So what we decided to do was wait, and this year we conduct surveys to make sure that the roads that we were proposing to build were the right roads, the ones that residents were asking for the most. And then also in our design, we actually hired a company, K. Freese and Associates, to be sort of the master of ceremonies over the entire bond package. So this engineering company who we've been working with and who's been working with our staff developed an exact standard of road construction that we want. And we are having companies propose to build based on that standard each and every road. And we also designed them already to 10%, which is why when you walk over here on the side of the building, you can look and see these aren't just ideas that we have. These are preparations that the city is making to construct these roads and reconstruct these roads. We did conduct a survey, and you can see here, this is sort of the word cloud that will show sort of the interest in the community. You can see Bunton, you can see East I-35, you see Windy Hill, BB, Old Stagecoach is a big one. You know, those are the roads that are being proposed. Nearly every single road here has, on this spreadsheet, has got improvements that are being proposed. We finalized our design a couple months ago, right before we called the bond, and obviously the number is pretty high. It's $294.4 million. That number is sort of staggering, and you hear in the community oftentimes, wow, why do you need a $300 million roads proposition? The truth is, of all the roads that we projected, the actual number came in at over $400 million worth of roads. So we actually cut it down to just the roads that you were going to see. Several things to note. Number one is that we are not proposing to construct all of these roads this coming year. So it's not a situation where if you pass a large bond like this, on November 9th, we go out and borrow $294.4 million. These roads projects get delivered over a period of time. It is estimated that it could take as much as 10 years to build all of these roads. And in particular, there are a couple projects that are definitely going to take some time. Some will go faster, some will go slower. So if you think about $294.4 million over 10 years, that's $29.4 million per year, which is something that the city can responsibly deliver to the community. What we need as a city, and the reason we're asking the voters to look at such a large package, what we're asking the voters to help us with is our planning. This really has to do with the next decade of development in the city of Kyle, and that's why it was put together in this way. So I'm going to just briefly go through the projects. The first one is probably the most ambitious. It's the Seton underpass underneath Kohler's Crossing, extending underneath I-35 and wrapping around and over Plum Creek into the backside of the Seton Hospital. This is a new construction road. We are putting the funding for the entirety of the project in this proposal, but we do anticipate, if the bond is approved, the very first thing we will do is go for an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT and try to get this project put into the Campo plans and help draw down state and federal dollars to assist in this project. It would be unwise, in my opinion, for us to only fund half the project and in anticipation of getting the remainder. We need to commit to the project fully so that we can move forward with the engineering and design, but it will certainly be the city's intent to draw down funds from through Campo from TxDOT and the state and federal government. It's pretty exciting. This project, as compared to the other projects, probably has the most economic development potential in the city. And what I mean by that is the tract of land that this project is moving around will be a site for a future major retail center. And so being able to get people from east to West Kyle underneath I-35 here will connect Costco and whatever other projects that the city may be working on the east side. And that's something that we think there's tremendous economic value to the community if we're able to put that project together. The next project is BB Road. BB Road is always highly prioritized because the majority of BB Road is still an old county road, and yet we have many developments that have come online down that road. And so constructing the entirety of BB Road will allow for commuters to go on a wider multi-lane road to I-35 back and forth so that they're not stopped up in traffic. Also smoothing out, you'll notice a pattern is smoothing out curves. Several of the roads in East Kyle have sharp turns, which is a safety problem, as well as just from an engineering standpoint, it's certainly not to the standard that we would want to see for our community. The next project is Old Stagecoach and Center Street. You know, we originally we've been working on the construction and development of Old Stagecoach for a number of years. It was one of the projects that I focused on all the way back to 2016 when I was first elected to the city council. There are several challenges with constructing Old Stagecoach, and unfortunately over time the costs of building this road have increased, but this road is on the ballot and if approved will compel the city of Kyle to move forward with construction. It's important, I think, also to note at this point that, you know, some people ask, like, if the bond is passed and we've proposed these roads, what's to prevent the city from saying, we're not going to use it to build Old Stagecoach. Instead, we're going to go use the money for another project. The truth is the general obligation bonds that are voter approved are a contract with the voters. And so by state law, we are required to expend the funds on the projects that we have proposed. We cannot take that money and go spend it elsewhere. So you can vote with confidence knowing that the road projects that we are pursuing are the road projects that will get built. And I submit to you as evidence for that, the 2013 road bond. Every single road that was proposed to the voters was constructed as promised. Also, Old Stagecoach includes upgrades to Center Street, and there's also a secondary element of Center Street. So one of the really neat projects will be taking Center Street and making it more urban, allowing for sidewalks and pedestrian access up and down Center Street to make for more mobility, not just for vehicles, but also for people. This includes lighting as well. So it can be very dark along Center Street at night, and so this project funds a lot of that also, storm drainage and other features. The next one is interesting. It's the other new construction project. So the underpass, Kohler's Underpass to Seton, and then the Kyle Parkway Lehman extension is the other new construction project. This road project essentially will extend Kyle Parkway east and allow for it to turn south and connect to Lehman, which will provide for a lot of traffic relief, we anticipate, in the traffic moving east and west on Bunton, and will also create new opportunities for commercial development. Commercial development really needs regional roads connecting it so that there's lots of different ways to get into and out of those projects. So this project in particular will allow for us to sort of extend the development pattern that you see along Kyle Parkway further out east, and to provide traffic relief for those folks who are commuting along Bunton Lane. The next project is the Marketplace Avenue final leg. This is one I'm really excited about because we've been working on putting the pieces of Marketplace together, going all the way back to the 2013 road bond. Marketplace was the first project that went off and started being constructed from our original 2013 bond, because it was all being built through Greenfield, and the right-of-way was donated for that project. And when you build through Greenfield, you don't have to divert traffic. It's much easier from a utility relocation. The right-of-way acquisition is one person. In this case, it would be the same thing. So this is a 30-month project, and it would connect our new public safety center on Kohler's Crossing all the way to downtown, ultimately. But it would make the important segment from the intersection of Marketplace and 1626 heading north to the piece that has been put where the North Point Industrial Park is. They've already built that section. This would connect those pieces and allow for the intersection at Kohler's and Marketplace to become a true 4-lane major commercial intersection, which again would be great for development of retail. And then also we have the Bunton Creek, and this one's very similar to the BB. So if you've been out Bunton Creek, you notice that there's a lot of traffic out there, and in particular traffic that gets caused by the high school and a lot of those development projects. So this proposal in particular is near and dear to my heart, because I believe that the Bunton Creek roadway extension, taking what we did from the 2013 road bond and extending it all the way out east, will be great for improving the quality of life for the folks who live out in that region. And then finally is the Windy Hill extension. It's the same concept, same theme. Folks who live down Windy Hill all the way out to Shadow Creek use Windy Hill on a daily basis. That road can get very backed up and congested. It has sharp turns. This project proposes to straighten out those turns and also connect to another roadway project that we did with the bridge that we built on Windy Hill to allow for all of those development communities to have an easy commute into I-35. So some of the themes here is east-west commutes. You know, we don't have the ability to fix I-35. We don't have the ability to change the commute between folks who live in Kyle and if they're working in Austin. The only thing that we can do from a commute standpoint is provide jobs in the community that might allow for people to work from home, which is something we're certainly working on. But we have the ability to make a big impact on the commute that people experience when they're taking their kids to school and back, or when they get off of I-35 to go home, or leave their home to get to I-35 in the mornings and in the afternoons during the school year. These projects are designed for that. They are designed to improve these county roads and put them to a city standard, and we just couldn't be more excited to go out and try to make these major roadway improvements. All right, let's talk about the costs. So the projected tax increase, this is what we have said, these are maximum rates. So the projected tax increase is proposed to be 9 cents. When I was first elected to the city of Kyle, our tax rate was about 58.5 cents per $100 in value. We have dropped that tax rate down to roughly 50 cents. So if approved, the maximum that we would potentially increase the tax rate would be basically back to that original tax rate that we had in 2016. That is not necessarily going to be the case. That is using conservative numbers. So one of the projections that our financial advisors used was they anticipated 10% growth over the next 2 years and then 2% growth thereafter as a way of determining the potential tax rate increase. Over the last 15 years, the city of Kyle has had an average of 15% growth. If you've looked around, the growth is not slowing. And in particular, we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in our commercial areas, which produces not only property taxes, but strong increases in sales tax. So if our growth continues at the pace that it has been over the last 15 years, we will far exceed what we are projecting in terms of coming up with this 9-cent valuation. So think of it as our way of being transparent about the top end of what it could cost. In 2013, when they took the proposition to the voters, it was projected to be a 21-cent tax increase. It ultimately ended up being 4 or 5 cents is what the financial advisors have told us. So that just can give you some context there. Additionally, the $294 million, that includes the acquisition of right-of-way. Multiple of these projects that I have shown, we anticipate being able to take the right-of-way in trade from the developers and have that right-of-way donated, which can create multiple millions of dollars worth of savings. So the idea here is the lesson from 2013 was they designed what they thought the construction costs would be, but they did not necessarily consider the inflation and the time that it would take to build it, or the right-of-way and the utility relocations, and ultimately we ended up spending more money than we asked the voters to approve, which we were able to afford because of the growth, but that took a bunch of money from cash. We are taking the opposite approach this time. We are projecting the full extent of what the road could cost with all factors, with a belief and understanding that we will be able to come in under budget on the majority of these projects and potentially under the tax rate impact that we are proposing. It's a desire to be transparent, and it's lessons learned from 2013. I didn't want to go back and if we have $294 million and say we're able to achieve 30 or 40 or $50 million worth of state and federal funding for some of the key projects that we are proposing, it also has a huge impact downward on that tax rate. So if we said we only wanted to potentially fund half, and then we came back later and weren't able to secure the state funding and had to ask the voters for more money or issue a CO bond or some other way, it could be a situation where the impact ended up being greater. So what we are proposing here absolutely makes it such that the impact will be at a maximum amount of what we've proposed or less. So one of the questions I get, there's like a consistency, 2 or 3 different questions that get asked. Well, why not pay for it out of the budget? So the way to think about roads projects in particular, just like your water and wastewater, is that you're sort of laying out the infrastructure over the cost of the future. So if you're trying to pay for everything with cash right now, so we said, hey, we're going to try to spend $100 million this next year on 2 roads, and we want to pay for it all with cash. Where do we get that cash? From the people who live here today, from the taxpayers today. So by borrowing the money, we're able to put the cost of that road out over the future. So as new people come in, who are really the ones who are causing the demand in the first place, they come in and are contributing to that debt service, and it is why we're able to propose a very moderate tax impact currently. That is something that took me, because when I first was elected in 2016, I had sort of a very similar mindset that the city should pay cash for everything and it should never borrow money. And we have been extremely conservative in our borrowing. When I was first elected, our total debt was right around $100 million. We dropped that to $70 million over the course of that first 5 years, while our city doubled in borrowing capacity. So we have gone, as a city that was really strapped for money in terms of our borrowing power, to a city that has a lot of borrowing power because of the growth that we've already experienced, and certainly because of the growth that is coming. Another question I get is, why don't you make the developers pay for the roads? And the answer is, we do. So the city of Kyle has adjacent lane mile fees, capital recovery fees, impact fees, and we also do special district financing that helps us raise money to construct roads. We do that all over town. So a lot of the road projects that you've seen have come from the monies that we have generated from the development community. The problem is when you have major roads. The cost of a major road has to be borne by the community. You can't ask for one subdivision to come in and pay. For example, Stagecoach Road is projected at, I believe, $30 million. And if we said, well, we have this new 300 new homes coming in, well, the cost per home would be disproportionate. And honestly, it wouldn't be fair in that situation because the roads get used by everyone, not just one single development. A single development might contribute 2 or 5% to the overall traffic impact on a road. And so the cost that they have to bear needs to be sort of commensurate to that so that everybody stays on a level playing field. And how long will it take? So the longest road project would be the Kohlers underpass to Seton. Because anytime you touch I-35, you have to add at least 1 year to the project. It takes a year to go through the TxDOT rules and regulations. Like I said, on the short end would be Marketplace. That's a 30-month project. And then there's sort of everywhere in between. So if the voters approve the proposition, the roads bond, it will become the council's immediate prerogative to determine which of the roads that it's going to start developing first, or what the strategy will be. So in 2013, the thought was they would do one road at a time. So it was design, acquire the roads, construct, cut the ribbon, then start on the next one. Design, acquire the road, the right-of-way, construct the road. The problem is when you stack these projects up like that, it would have been 20 years to build those projects. So what we're trying to do is take a more comprehensive approach. So what we'll probably be doing is looking at acquiring the right-of-way on all of these projects and starting the engineering on all of these projects to get them shovel ready. And then depending on factors like the economy and then council direction, we will be taking off one project at a time. But they're all going to be working and moving forward on some level once, assuming the proposition passes. Another question I get is what happens if the proposition doesn't pass? And well, it's not necessarily good news because state law prevents the cities from issuing CO bonds for road construction for 3 years if that road has been put as a proposition to the voters and has failed. So there's some concern there. If the proposition fails, it would be a setback. One thing we could potentially do is come back to the voters again with a different package potentially, but that is certainly going to cause a setback as well. We will be starting on the design of these roads first part of next year. And again, we're already at 10%, but we will be going the remainder of the way should the proposition pass. We've done a lot in terms of outreach. So this is the third public event that I've participated in. And on October 1st, we did a town hall at City Hall. On October 20th, we did a town hall at the Public Works Building. Speaking here today, as well as meeting with residents, we've done extensive social media outreach. We have a website, cityofkyle.com/bonds, I believe. KyleBonds.com, sorry. I'm sure that one redirects anyway. KyleBonds.com, where you can get a lot more information. You can look at the plans in more details. You can watch the original Q&A, which was a panel that included our police chief, that included our engineer, it included our financial advisors, as well as was moderated by Gap Strategies. That was a really good meeting with lots of information. The main thing is now is the time. This is on Chamber Votes Day. Now is the time for the community to decide. And so the early voting is started, as has been mentioned. It goes all this week, it goes all next week, and then the vote will be on November 8th. And then on November 9th, we will know what the direction is from the voters. We're trying the very best that we can to take our cues from the residents. The residents have said resoundingly through the years that they want us focused on roads infrastructure, and what we have tried our very best to do is to present a plan that wasn't half-baked, a plan that was fully thought out and that had projects that were really viable and ready to go. So hopefully on November 9th, we'll have an opportunity to continue moving the city forward, but we'll wait and hear from the voters. You can see, obviously, when you look at this map, that there's a lot of focus on East Kyle. And that's just frankly because there's a lot of development in East Kyle, and the infrastructure in East Kyle is lacking behind West Kyle, because in West Kyle we were fortunate to get some really significant projects 20 years ago, well I guess it's been 15 years ago, that created Kohler's Crossing, 2770, 1626 that now became 1626 all the way up to 45 into Kyle. Those are really great projects, but this proposition rightly should be focused on East Kyle development, because those projects absolutely need to happen at some point in time. But it's more than just the focus on one side of town or the other. What it's really focused on is connectivity between sides of town. If you go and study, what people will talk about is I-35, because of the way that it was constructed, north and south, between topographical boundaries. On the west side of Kyle, you've got different type of development material. On the east side, it's a little bit worse for roads infrastructure and things like slabs, but roads, they start to heave faster. They have a shorter shelf life. We are ready to focus on East Kyle and build out these roads in such a way that they will last for a long time and provide that quality of life from a commuting standpoint. So that's the basic message that I have, and typically what I have found is that things work better on this subject if folks have questions and I have an opportunity to answer. So I don't know if anybody had any questions that they wanted to submit related to the bond.
Question is, why was it packaged as all-in-one package versus individual projects? And is there an audit and reporting plan?
Well, I can answer the first question. You're going to have to elaborate on the second part of that question, because I'm not quite sure what that is. There was a discussion back and forth. We considered one proposition, two propositions, three propositions. We weren't exactly sure which direction to go. There are different schools of thought. There was conversations about making every road its own proposition. But ultimately, what we felt like is that the more we split them out into different road projects, the more likely it would be for voting centers to vote their interest. Speaking for myself personally, my greatest fear would be that one road on the west side got approved because we have so many voters on the west side, and roads on the east side didn't get approved. It is difficult, I think, to get people's mind around the idea of voting for a road to be improved on the other side of town that they don't use. So what our thinking is to bring everybody together, to solve all of our projects together so that there's something in there for everyone to consider, that regardless of where you live in town, you can see how it would increase your quality of life, and you would be able to make a vote on that. Certainly, it could have gone a different way, but that's the direction that the city chose. Let's assume the bond passes, right? What that does is that gives us our direction to start the project. So we will be having town halls and information gathering sessions on each and every project as we're getting them ready. So the decision of whether or not a road is going to have a roundabout. Well, we have prepared as if it would be a roundabout because they are more expensive. But if it is the case that a roundabout is not wanting, if the community in that area doesn't want to accept a roundabout, there's going to be opportunities for those conversations to take place. None of the plans are hard and fast, but they are 10% engineered, which shows the viability of the project and gives an idea of how they could function so that we can have an accurate cost estimate. But there is a wide gap between going from 0 to 10% engineering and going from 10% to 100%. And that's where a lot of the decisions about individual roads and features within roads will be made. Hope that answers your question.
Mayor, can you elaborate on the relationship needed to develop an underpass to Seton? Is that collaborating with TxDOT?
Yes, that one is complicated. So TxDOT is a huge factor. We have met with TxDOT multiple times. We've shown them the plans. The reason that it's proposed as an underpass came from TxDOT, so they're very much aware of what we're doing. They're waiting and in expectation of an advanced funding agreement, an AFA, to be proposed to them and voted on by the council and funded. So that what an AFA does is it invites TxDOT to the table into following their rules and procedures, and then we determine the viability of the project moving forward. Getting one of the important things that TxDOT wants to see is that the project is supported by CAMPO, which is the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm on the board of CAMPO. Commissioner Mark Jones is an officer on the board of CAMPO. He's aware of this project. I've discussed this project with CAMPO directors. I've discussed it with Tucker Ferguson, who's the top dog at TxDOT, as well as their engineering group. And so they're ready to make those considerations. What they want to see, and the reason why we have funded it and proposed it the way that we have, is they want to see that we are committed to the project. They want to, that way they know that they're not wasting their time. So if we said, hey, let's go start this engineering, let's get all TxDOT together, let's get them focused on this underpass, and then, oh, now we have to go find the money, TxDOT won't go for that. So we are doing this, we are following the steps that are required in order to get a project like this approved by TxDOT and funded through CAMPO. And CAMPO is how we draw down the state and federal dollars. So we will be trying to put this project immediately into the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is called a TIP, in the CAMPO 2040 plan to get it funded.
All the companies coming to Kyle are many. What tax incentives are being given to these companies? And if tax incentives are given, can these taxes help finance the road costs instead of taxing citizens?
Well, so I would start with the question. Out of every 100 companies that come to the city of Kyle, how many do you think that we give tax breaks to? And the answer is probably 2%, 5%. Amazon, Lowe's, all the businesses coming into the HPI, those kind of projects, Academy, Hobby Lobby, you know, those businesses are not receiving tax incentives. The majority of the time, tax incentives fall under two categories. Number one, we are giving a tax break in exchange for infrastructure. So, for example, we have one project right now at Limestone Creek, which is a subdivision, which is, it's not on this plan, but if you will look, what we're trying to do right now is to connect Yarrington straight north, the Yarrington exit straight north through 158 to 150 right next to Post Oak, to allow for all of the developments on the east side of 150 to be able to turn and go south as opposed to having to go north and loop back. We're not proposing that in this bond, because we have worked out agreements with the developers to pay for the entirety. So one of the incentives that we gave was to the 1.4 million square feet Alliance Industrial. That was a city incentive and a county incentive, 380 and 381. And the reason that we gave them a tax break over the course of, I think, 5 or 10 years, I don't remember the details of it, the reason we gave them a tax break is because they funded Go Forth Road from Yarrington all the way up to the Quail Ridge subdivision, which is a huge stretch, multiple millions of dollars worth of road infrastructure that they paid for that is very much an arterial road. So that is an example of how we would use it. The other example might be something like Costco, which we gave an incentive with the county to attract them here, and that is because a company like Costco accomplishes two things. First, they have all the options and can go to multiple cities, and we're being bid by multiple cities, so we are in competition with them, with Buda, with San Marcos, and with New Braunfels for a Costco location. So if we chose not to, they would have moved on, and there's a cost there. And then number two is, even with the incentive, they become our #1 taxpayer in the city of Kyle, and it's not even close. $1.5 million a year, $100,000 a month in net proceeds after incentive to the city of Kyle, which is more than anyone else. So it's one of those questions where we're trying to make wise, calculated decisions, but we're certainly not giving away the farm. We actually played we played chicken with Costco, because they asked for an incentive that would have been the biggest incentive that they had ever received, bigger than the one they just got in Pflugerville. And we said, no, we're going to actually give you an incentive that is less than what you just received from the city of Pflugerville. And ultimately we negotiated, which is very tough to do because the community has such a strong desire for Costco and because of the value that Costco brought to the community. But those are the categories that incentives fall in. We don't just give away money at all, ever. We're trying to build an economically strong community. All right, thank you all very much.